Alright, let's try this again. This is round 2. I don't know what's going on with YouTube, but I would be super keen if it would stop doing the stop recording thing in the middle of me recording. Particularly when it's in the last 5 minutes of me recording. That makes me very sad. All that work and then it down the toilet. Anyway, good morning. It is Wednesday, November the 11th. November the 11th, 2015. Yeah, we have a year in there. Today is Veterans Day. It is the day where, at least in America, we honor our vets from the armed services. So I would like to say thank you to all of our vets, particularly to the vets of my family. So thanks, Dad, Grandpa, my Uncle Joe. Thank you guys for your service, and I really do appreciate everything that our men and women are doing for us now and have done for us in the past. Despite what we may think about our soldiers' bosses at any given time, we should always support our soldiers. They are men and women who are doing the job that they're being paid to do, and sometimes it ain't pretty and sometimes it ain't fun, but it's almost always necessary. So thank you everyone for the services that you provide for us. Today we're going to talk about oracle cards. We're not going to talk about tarot decks much. That's a different day. The biggest difference between an oracle deck and a tarot deck is a tarot deck has suits. A tarot deck is set up like a deck of cards where you have a major arcana and a minor arcana, and the minor arcana includes 4 suits. And those 4 suits include 14 cards. Okay? So a tarot deck has 70 some odd cards. I'm not going to do the math right now. I'm memory bad. But the tarot deck then has suits and arcanas. Okay? Oracle decks are not constrained by suits. They can have suits. They can have numbers. They can have major and minor arcanas, but they are not specifically defined as a tarot deck because they are not specifically set up as a tarot deck. So they are defined as oracle decks. And oracle decks can come in any kind of theme that you can imagine. Most of my oracle decks revolve around goddesses of some sort. The particular deck that I'm going to use today, for example, is a Kuan Yin Oracle deck, and this is, the author for this one is Alana Fairchild. So there's your book. Very lovely little book. Beautiful deck. And this was a gift that was given to me. I got this deck, and I also got Alana Fairchild's Isis deck, I think for Christmas last year or birthday last year. Maybe it was the year prior. And they're beautiful. The art in them is just really fabulous. This is the Princess of the Autumn Harvest. This is the card for today for me. So the thing I hear the most from people when they're talking about reading tarot or they're talking about reading oracle is, oh my God, I can't do it. I can't do it because there's so much to remember. I feel you. I hear you on that one. Most people, when they're first starting to read, choose to go through that process by doing a layout, asking a question, doing a layout, doesn't matter how many cards they do, and then individually looking up each of the cards to figure out what its meaning is. The problem with this is when you're first reading with a deck and you haven't become acquainted with the deck, or you're first reading in general, you have no relationship with these cards yet. You have no real relationship with the art yet. And you're reading, so you're taking something in mentally and you're trying to immediately integrate, you're trying to immediately consume, understand, and integrate what it is that you've just mentally read with what you are emotionally feeling and what you are trying to spiritually convey. And a lot of people, brains don't work that fast. That's a lot of switching awfully quickly. So what I tell people when you're starting to do readings is put the book away. Don't do the book. Learn the cards. The story I like to tell people is I used to have a lot of trouble with tarot and oracle decks, and I was with a women's group. It was around 15-ish years ago. And I was talking with one woman in particular, and I said, "Oh, I can't do tarot. I just can't do it." And she says, "Why not?" I said, "Well, I just can't. I can't remember everything." And da 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 da. And she says, "Well, how are you doing it?" And I explained it. I was doing it just like I had said. I booked the whole thing. And she goes, "No, no, 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 no." She says, "That's not how you do it." She says, "Sit down." So we sat down and we took a tarot deck that I had with me, and I had a deck called Daughters of the Moon Tarot. And the Daughters of the Moon Tarot is a round deck, and it's very primitive art, very feminist art. It's almost all women. I think there's only one card with a man on it. And it actually has a duplicate card that doesn't have any men on it. So if you want a deck that is just women, you can have that. But all of the women in the deck, for the most part, are either topless or nude. But like I said, it's very primitive, very feminist art. It's a beautiful deck. It's not necessarily my flavor, but it's a very beautiful deck. And so we sit down, and she says, "Okay, here's what we're going to do." And she flips a card. And she says, "Tell me about this card." I went, "Oh my God, I don't know. Where's the?" She says, "No, you can't have the book." She says, "Look at the card." Okay. She says, "What's on the card?" "Women." She says, "Tell me the story. What do you see on the card?" And what I saw on the card was I saw a woman. She was lying on a beach. She was nude. You could see the ocean. The woman was surrounded by 7 of her sisters, her spiritual sisters. And they were also nude, but they were all kneeling around her, and they all had hands on her, and it looked very much like they were doing a healing session. And I told her this whole story about this woman getting this healing session. And when I got done, she says, "That's how you read a card. You look at the card, you feel the card, you tell the card's story." And that's easy enough to say about specialized decks where they have very specialized art. But for a lot of us, when we get into reading decks like the tarot and you start getting into things like Rider-Waite, it's harder to see in that imagery that they are showing you, it's harder to see the story because we're not as related to that story anymore. The stories that are told in the older style decks are not the stories that we're told now. Which is why more contemporary decks are popular, not just for their beauty, but they're more popular because we can relate to them better. So the Kuan Yin deck and the Isis deck that I got those, I asked for those because they both resonate with me as being goddesses that I work with. So if you're not reading the book, then how are you learning them? A card a day. 1 card a day. So what I do when I'm learning a new deck, and it does take a few months, it takes 1 card a day. I'll sit down with the card, and I'll look at the card, and I'll spend a minute or two just looking at the card. And I will journal anything that comes to mind as I'm looking at that card. I will journal off the title of the card if it has a title. If the number of the card, like this number on the card, is 22, you see it real tiny there. If that means anything to me, I will write down what that means. And after I've finished looking and writing about it, then I'll go to the book and I'll read the page on the book. And if that resonates with me, if there's anything that particularly sticks out, I will journal on that as well. And then I will just spend, at the end of that, about a minute or two just looking at the card and just confirming what I feel with that card. So it ends up being anywhere from a 5 to 10 minute process per card. And I will just do 1 a day. And then all day long, I hold that image of that card in my heart, in my forefront of my brain. You know, when I'm in idle time, I think about that card. I put it someplace prominent so that as I'm moving around my house, I see that card, or I move around my room, I see that card. So that card is all I think about that day. Just that card. And then the next day I do another one. And in this way, you learn the deck, okay? Which is a really nice way to learn the deck. You build a great relationship with your deck that way. When you get books like this, some of them are nice big books, some of them are smaller ones. Most books will have an introduction that explains why this deck exists. Most of them will have a how to use this deck section. This card also has suggested card spreads. A lot of other guidebooks will have that too. And this one also has a Kuan Yin's mantra, so there's a prayer, there's a prayer in here. And then it goes through, and each card has like 2 pages of description. And then it talks about the artist and talks about the author. And that's a fairly significant book, but that's all pretty common stuff that you're going to find in the book. In this one, and in most of them, they show you a little picture of the card along with the description. And each one has a little prayer at the end of the card. So, like this one has the prayer of divine blessing from the Princess of the Autumn Harvest. And there's also a section in there that says receiving the divine blessing from the Princess of the Autumn Harvest. So you get quite a few different ways to actually approach this card with this deck. And every deck will do something different. The long and the short of it is, don't let cards intimidate you. Make them your friends. There's only 50 to 100 cards in there. It should only take you about 3 months to really become acquainted with a deck. And the more you use the deck, the more stories it will tell you. It's like friends. They don't tell you everything all at once. They tell you the stuff that you need to know about them first. And then they tell you the little things. Then they tell you their little stories. They tell you their little secrets. And they share joys with you. Treat cards the same way. This is how you learn decks. Can you do cold readings the first time you open a deck? Sure you can. It may not be fabulous, but sure you can. But get to know your cards and get to know your deck, because when you do that, you make for a better reading, and you really do want a decent reading, whether it's for yourself or for others. Because remember, people aren't asking questions in readings just for the joy of asking questions in readings. People are asking questions because they are truly at a crossroads at something in their life, and they need to make conscious decisions, and they want to have answers from all possible spectrums so that they can make a good, well-educated decision, usually. There are exceptions to the rule. There always is. So you owe it to yourself, and you owe it to whomever you're reading for, to have a good relationship with your cards. Don't take on too many decks of cards at once. Just do 1 deck of cards at a time, and learn it before you move into a different one. And you may never move into a different one after learning your first one. So anyway, I hope that helps you with reading oracle cards. And like I said, we'll do tarot another week. Maybe we'll do tarot next week. I hope this helps, and I hope you enjoyed the video. And yeah, if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments, and I will see you next week. Bye! Have a great weekend.